Hello, everyone. We are currently live. We are back now with the Elected Podcast, episode 10. And today is St. Patrick's Day, Tuesday, March 17th, 2020. We were about to step onto the phone with congressional candidate George Phillips, who is running for Congress in New York's 22nd Congressional District, against Congressman Anthony Brindisi, who we've had on the show before and are looking forward to having on the show in the future. We've also invited George Phillips' opponent for the Republican nomination, Claudia Tenney, to come on the show, and we've not received word back from Claudia Tenney or her campaign just yet, but we have reached out to all the candidates for New York's 22nd Congressional District for spots here on the podcast. So, without further ado, let's get into our main headline, which is, as expected, the coronavirus. The coronavirus is a major story now in the news, and the White House has just released guidelines for Americans to follow during the coronavirus outbreak. They've done 15 days of guidance. Of course, now that's 14 days of guidance to slow the spread of the coronavirus. And so we are going to talk about those guidelines from the White House and much, much more with congressional candidate George Phillips. We're about to call him right now. Let's see here. We're about to step on him. How are you?
Good. How you doing?
Good, thanks. We are live right now. We're recording for the Elected Podcast. Could you give yourself a brief introduction and let the people know who you are?
Sure. George Phillips, candidate for Congress in New York's 22nd Congressional District. I'm a teacher. I've done a lot of economic policy work for the Jack Kemp Foundation in Reclaim New York. And I'll be facing Claudia Tenney in the June 23rd Republican primary, and then Anthony Brindisi in the general election in November.
Alrighty, so let's talk about our main story here today on this episode of the podcast. And you should know, by the way, we brought back the podcast from the 2018 election, and you're our first guest so far on the podcast. So, that's a distinguished honor. I hope you know that. But let's talk about our top story. Is the coronavirus outbreak. I want to ask you, if you were a congressman, what steps would you take to protect Americans during this coronavirus outbreak?
Well, I'd be carefully working with federal officials and how we might be able to liaison with state officials to get the things out that we need to keep American people safe. I think a big question right now is, do we have enough testing kits? So that's one of the number one issues here. The more testing kits that we have out there, I think the better off we are. Second, treatment. Are we going to have capacity in hospitals? That's a huge concern right here. We're making preparations to have, if you will, MASH type units that we many of us know who saw the 80s, 70s, 80s TV show MASH, but temporary hospital spaces if this does break out. But right now, I think everyone is cooperating on all levels of government. We're seeing a lot of judicious action from the schools, from town governments. I talked to a town supervisor. He was going through similar challenges that everyone's going through today on a micro level versus the governor, versus the president of the United States. I talked to someone who runs student housing at a university, and he said, we're going through a lot right now. So we're all in this together. And as an American history teacher, I would just say that I have a chance to reflect more frequently than most on the crisis this country's faced. We've always come together. We've always persevered and gotten through them. So we will here, but let's hope we do so with a minimal loss of life and health, and the economy is certainly a paramount concern as well.
I want to ask you if you're the congressman, what specific measures would you take going forward? They have the Families First Act, which is moved through the House now and is in the Senate, and there's also been proposals for an emergency UBI stimulus. Do you support any of those proposals?
Sure, I support legislation that's moving right now. We need the relief for small business. We need money for testing kits. We do have to be careful as these are going through, and this will be the question in the Senate. Are there too many add-ons? Are there things that are going to become permanent that in the times where we weren't in crisis, these were debatable items? You know, for example, family leave. No one's doubting right now during this crisis that someone may have to leave their job to care for a loved one, but how are we going to pay for this? We were working on this for several years. It was a priority of the Trump administration, but we also have the flip side. Are employers going to be on the bill for it? Is it coming out of individuals, perhaps tax credits, child tax credits? So all of these things have to be on the table. We have to make sure that we get this legislation through as quickly as possible. But I don't think we should have a lot of add-ons. We should look at the situation now, how critical it is, and get the healthcare needs in there first for the immediate crisis.
I want to talk about you've pitched yourself as the truer conservative in the Republican primary race. Obviously, we're speaking with George Phillips, a Republican congressional candidate who is running in the primary against former Congresswoman Claudia Tenney, and then hoping to run in the general against Congressman Anthony Brindisi. And you have pitched yourself in this primary race as the truer conservative. So I want to ask you, Mitt Romney, the senator from Utah, has announced that he's supporting an emergency UBI stimulus, giving American adults $1,000 a month throughout the crisis, which is actually similar to something Democratic presidential candidate Andrew Yang proposed during his bid for the White House. Would you support getting government bureaucracy out of determining who should receive the tax credits and who should receive the funds from these relief programs and giving it directly into the hands of the American people?
Yeah, I'd like to see what's proposed. The president's obviously talking about something now as well. And what you just mentioned, I think, was getting out of the hands of bureaucracy and in the hands of the American people. Will this be the same amount going out for each person? We'll have to see. I am conservative. I think we need to be conservative with the people's money. We have to know the money that's spent during this crisis will hopefully be gained as the economy recovers here. But there is certainly a sense of the last resort here and getting some influx into the economy. So I'm generally supportive of these efforts, but I want to see again what the clear proposal is. I think it will come from the president at the end of the day.
And I want to talk about specifically how the coronavirus has affected your campaign. And my question is twofold. First, just allowing you to elaborate, has the coronavirus directly affected your campaign, the way you're going out and campaigning? And then if the coronavirus does extend through June and into July and August, do you think that the primary election between yourself and Congresswoman Tenney be postponed or potentially canceled?
Yeah, so first, in terms of the campaign, for those who are following it, one huge part of campaigns is the petitioning. So myself, many other committee people are out there gathering petition signatures to get on the ballot. Those who would have normally been submitted on April 1st, they've cut that time to this week. Legislation was going through Albany today saying, look, the turn-in period is now going to be Wednesday to Friday. The cutoff just passed for collecting signatures. The governor's executive order said there should be no signatures collected after 5 o'clock today.
So do you have enough signatures to get on the ballot in June?
Yeah, we have more than enough. We'll have several times enough here. So they come in from the other counties. We're now in the process of collecting the signatures. So as you ask practical sides, what's happened to campaigns, we've had to truncate the petition process. And we're fine with it. The opportunity that's this lost year is I was looking forward to another couple of weeks of talking to voters. I was really enjoying that, going door to door and talking to people during these petitions. In terms of the primary, I do think it will happen at some point, hopefully on June 23rd. Hopefully this crisis will pass by then. But if not, I'm certain we'll have one at some point. Listeners will remember that the primary in New York State used to be in September, and we'd all like to hope that for sure this crisis has passed by that time. So I'm sure between June 23rd and hopefully early September we will have a primary for this seat, and we're hoping to connect with enough voters and be successful in it.
Yep, and I want to ask you specifically about the primary election from a campaigning perspective. As we move, if you were to move on into the general election, how would you specifically campaign in order to beat Anthony Brindisi?
Sure. Well, we have to campaign on the issues. I think he's been on the wrong side of the issues. Before coronavirus came up, the hot issue obviously was impeachment. He voted to impeach the president. That was an important vote because it was a monumental step of removing a president from office without evidence. If you could impeach Trump under this amount of evidence, are we going to just have endless impeachments from future presidents when there's political disagreements? But moreover, I think it's undermined his key case that he was independent, that he wouldn't just go along with the party. And my point would be, if he's going to have such bad judgment on an issue like this, what else will he go along with when they want to do single-payer health care, Medicare for all, other issues like that? I've got to make the case on what I stand for. And when I talk to voters at the doors, I start off with local. And I say, I want to lower your property taxes by making it illegal for federal welfare mandates to be passed from Albany to our local taxes. I want to mandate work requirements for all able-bodied welfare recipients and drug testing for welfare. I've got a plan to rein in the national debt. I want to make a dynamic market of choice for healthcare. So we have many choices in health insurance to lower costs and get better care. I think we're going to win on the issues, and I'm confident in that. Overall, there's a whole range of voters. We're looking to try to connect with all of them. I think I connect well with working class voters that are so much part of this Trump coalition, not just Republicans, but Democrats and independents. My grandpa was born on his family farm. He was a labor union leader who fought to get weekends off. I worked in manufacturing at the IBM plant. My summers in college, I'm a teacher, and at the Catholic school I teach at, my base salary when I was full-time, I never cleared $40,000 a year. I had other jobs as well, but I can relate to the working class voters in this district. I also can relate to, if you will, the moderates, the people who aren't necessarily part of the base Trump coalition, Republicans who may have voted for Brindisi in the past, and others, and women voters who we did very well with last time. I'm going to look in the camera and say to them, as a congressional aide, I work to rescue women from human trafficking rings. I'm going to use that same expertise to try to come up with legislation and plans to smash the drug supply lines from Mexico that are leading so many thousands of deaths of Americans every year. I'm going to use that expertise to try to improve health care so we all can have better health care. I think those messages are going to resonate with independent voters that Brindisi may have done better with in the last election against Tenney.
I want to ask you, on your campaign website, you said that you will fight to ensure, and I'm quoting here, that no one is left untreated. Does that mean that people would have to, right now in our current healthcare system, no one is supposed to be left untreated. It sounds like you're saying that you would want to make sure that everyone has access to affordable healthcare. Can you walk us through specifically how you would do that?
Yeah, specifically, we need more choices. We need more choices for everyone. And I think one big thing for the private sector is to look at the health savings accounts. How can we increase them? Some employers are having them now, but if we could start to have smaller bills paid for through health savings accounts that, first and foremost, employers are supporting for employees, I think that'll cut a lot of red tape in healthcare from, wow, here's a basic hospital visit, here's a basic doctor's office visit, rather, $100, and we have a series of letters going back and forth from the insurance company, from the doctor's office. There's just a lot of red tape in there, so I think health savings accounts are really big. Having more choices in insurance is big. If you look at New York State right now, there's only a couple providers. Most people with their employer, it is choice A or B, plan A or B. You don't have the choices you have in other industries like life insurance, like car insurance. So more choices are going to improve it. I think we can model that under Medicaid, which would fall under what I said, no one being left behind. We have a Medicaid program in New York State right now that 33% of the state is on. I think if we improve the private sector healthcare and have more choices, lower cost, more New Yorkers will be able to afford private insurance. And then I think within Medicaid, we can even follow some of these models and have perhaps for lower end Medicaid bills, a health savings type part of the account for higher end Medicaid, have private insurance coming in that the Medicaid recipients would get vouchers to buy. So it'd get the government out. We'd get out also a system where people are being charged different amounts based on the insurance they have. Let's say I had Medicaid and you had private insurance. We both broke our legs. The government comes to the hospital after treating the person with Medicaid and says, oh, this costs $500 to treat them. Okay, we're giving you $600. So they make very little on the Medicaid patient, unfortunately. Then on the private sector, they might say, okay, we're charging you something astronomical, $2,500 for the same bill. Now, I'm just throwing out numbers here, but I know myself when I was on private insurance and I had a test for an aneurysm because my father had it when he was younger, just a hereditary check. It was basically an ultrasound that a woman would receive with the basic pregnancy check. It cost $2,500. That's just ridiculous. The Trump administration is mandated now that pricing is available to consumers. We need to see pricing. I am actually going to tell voters today and in the general election that I don't have health insurance. My Reclaim New York plan was $30,000 a year, the nonprofit I was working for. I couldn't afford it, even with my employer putting a lot of the money in. So I'm on something called MediShare. We share bills with other people in the partnership. I do have a high deductible, but I'm paying a very low amount each month. and it's saving our family a lot of money, and it's a great fix for us. We need more choices like Medishare, like health insurance companies competing against each other for our business. Right now, they're not doing that because there's only a few of them dominating the market.
So I want to ask you, I want to pivot now to back to the primary election. I want to talk about your opponent, former Congresswoman Claudia Tenney. She's criticized you for being a candidate who has only had strength in the southern part of the district, specifically in Broome County. What is your response to those remarks?
Well, in these last couple of weeks, I've been in Oneida County incessantly, and we've been doing petitioning, and people are excited. Voters are still getting to know me, but people are looking for a fresh face. I think we're going to do very well in the northern part of the district this time. I did run on the ballot 4 years ago, and we had a very formidable opponent, a third person in the race, Steve Wells. He had huge resources. He had a lot of early support from the northern part of the district. It made it difficult for us, but we've had more time to be up north. We're just getting known now in the northern part of the district, and this coronavirus certainly is very difficult, but we have still over 100 days till the schedule, the June 23rd primary, and I think we started to get our name out there the last weeks, the last month. I think that's when voters are really going to look at this race and make a decision. I think they want a fresh face to face Anthony Brindisi.
Well, let me push back on that just a little bit. The Oneida County Republicans have endorsed Claudia Tenney up north, and the president also with other endorsements. The president has endorsed Claudia Tenney, Liz Cheney, the third-ranking House member, and the House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy has endorsed Claudia Tenney. Do you think that they were mistaken in doing so?
Sure. I would say with the president, I don't know him. I know he knows Claudia Tenney as a former member that he campaigned for, and came up short, but certainly knows her. These other House leadership know her. I think if they really looked at me in our race and in the future, I think they'd be pleased if I come through the primary. They know we'd have a great chance against Brindisi. So those endorsements are national endorsements in terms of what we're seeing on the ground, even within the committees. Oneida Committee may have endorsed her, but I know there's a lot of people in Oneida County that are supporting us, a lot of Republicans who weren't at the committee meeting but are certainly supporting us. We did have a huge endorsement in the district. It more relates to the southern part of the district, but it was a 77,000-member Joint Landowners Association, and they are working on mineral rights for natural gas drilling. It's a huge issue in the southern part of the district, especially with Republicans, and they've got a vast network here. So we're very happy with that. The ultimate endorsement is every single voter in this district on Election Day, and I certainly hear a lot of people who are Trump fans, Trump supporters saying, wow, the president endorsed her, but I disagree with this, and I want to go with you. So,
well, let me ask, the question is that Congressman Brindisi has had 4 of his bills signed by President Trump. As you said, Claudia Tenney does have some pretty good access to the president, obviously able to get his endorsement and bring him to the district. Do you think that that's a challenge that you're having, is that you're not very well known in the district itself, and you're not very well known with the people who are going to be making the decisions if you are elected?
Yes, I think we could make a name for ourselves right away if elected. I worked on 4 bills signing into laws of congressional aid. I would take exception to Brindisi's 4 bills. I know there was veterans laws. I served the chairman of the Veterans Affairs Committee. I didn't work on any of his laws in that area, but that's been an area where Republicans and Democrats have come together. There's a lot of bipartisan legislation coming out of the Veterans Committee. A third law that he references is actually language in a much larger defense authorization bill. So it was not a standalone law as was let out in the commercial. I have researched, and I can't seem to find the 4th law. So there was 2 veterans laws, which got a lot of activity in the Veterans Committee. The 3rd law about manufacturing silverware in the Department of Defense was really just a small amount of language in a much larger law. So I think it's disingenuous for him to take credit for a full law on that one.
Sure. But I want to ask, I want to kind of come full circle here with kind of the dollars and cents. This is Q4 numbers. We're looking at Claudia Tenney has raised $286,000 in the 4th quarter. You only raised $57,000, but the real kicker is that Congressman Brindisi outraised you both combined. with almost $1 million. Are you concerned that there's not enough enthusiasm for you, and there's not enough enthusiasm even for a Republican replacement for Congressman Brindisi? And then do you think that your Q1 fundraising numbers, which should be coming soon here, will those reflect better the strength of your campaign?
Yeah, so two things. One, we have a Republican primary. There's traditionally a small number of voters who show up for the Republican primary. We need less resources to reach them then, just because not as many vote.
Well, let me push back on that, though. Brindisi's not being primaried by anyone, and he's raised almost $1 million.
Yeah, sure. So, first of all, one, I think we're going to have the resources to get through the primary. If you go back to 2018, when there was no Tenney primary opponent and no Brindisi primary opponent, both of them had probably combined $3 to $4 million that they'd raised. Now, those were targeted candidates getting a lot of national money early. Yep. So let's just throw out that figure of $3 to $4 million, $4 million. There's approximately $25 million spent on that race. So $21 million came in after what would have been the June primary date. That's national super PAC money, party money, national donors coming in. We're going to see that again. At the end of the day, I don't think we'll have as much money as Anthony Brindisi, but we'll certainly have enough to get our message out. Look at Claudia Tenney the last time under that scenario. Roughly 6 to 7 million came in late for her, not directly just, but other independent groups coming in. There's going to be a lot of resources here. We're going to have enough to get our message out. And overall, I'm going to lead on an agenda focused on freedom during this time where we've had Sanders, but we still have Sanders pulling Biden to the left. Yep. We need freedom here. We have the government policies from the left taking away freedom, things I've talked about in healthcare choice, in welfare to work. These are going to increase freedom for the American people, and that's what we're going to lead on, and I think it's going to make us successful.
Well, I just want to say I really appreciate you coming on the show to answer these questions, and if I have the opportunity to ask Claudia Tenney this question, I will. I've invited her on the podcast, and so as soon as she takes us up on that offer, we'll be happy to sit down and interview her and ask her this question. Let's say things don't turn out the way you want them to. There's been quite a few barbs thrown at each other throughout the primary process. I want to ask former Congressman Richard Hanna passed away. He endorsed Anthony Brindisi the last time around in the 2018 election. Is there any chance that you will be endorsing anyone other than Claudia Tenney, or will you be supporting Claudia Tenney come November?
Yeah, well, I'm hoping to support myself, and I have to mention in this moment here, I'm running to community college classes. It's our last one before we're going to online learning, but I will just finish with this, that we're hopeful we're the nominee. I did really want Tenney to win. The last time I was working for a nonprofit group where I couldn't give endorsements, but I certainly was telling anyone within the parameters scheduled by my group to vote for Tenney. I wanted to keep a Republican House very badly. I would say right now voters should look at this and say George Phillips is the only one who could defeat Anthony Brindisi. If Tenney couldn't beat Brindisi last time in the district, Trump won by 15 points. Mark Molinaro on the same ticket, Republican candidate for governor, won by over 20 points. She's not going to be able to beat him now. I'm the only one who could beat Brindisi, and I think voters will come to that conclusion by the time we get to the primary day.
Alrighty, and then I want to ask you as well, we're going to have Congressman Brindisi on the podcast very soon, at least we're planning to. Is there any question that you would like us to ask the congressman?
I'm going to hold off until we're in actual debates with him and in the campaign against him. I think he's going to have a lot of explaining to do about his record, and I look forward to those debates when I get a chance to debate Anthony Brindisi in the fall campaign.
Understood. Congressional candidate George Phillips, Republican, running for New York's 22nd Congressional District. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Luke. Take care.